Hello and welcome to Moonshot, a show by Sequoia India and Southeast Asia that profiles innovative startups and inspiring founders who are dreaming big, making an impact and driving change across the region. I'm your host, Dewi Fabri, and throughout this podcast, we'll be introducing you to founders and thought leaders who are helping shape the region's startup ecosystem. We hope this podcast will give you fresh ideas on how to start and scale an enduring company. Millions of people across India use digital payment apps and mobile wallets to transact every day. Digitally savvy millennials are now turning to fintech apps to invest and grow their savings. In 2016, Lalit Keshre, Harsh Jain, Neeraj Singh, and Ishan Bansal launched Groww, an easy-to-use investment platform. On this episode of Moonshot, we chat with Lalit Keshre, co-founder and CEO of Groww, and Ashish Agrawal, managing director at Sequoia India, about how the startup's razor-sharp product focus and strong tech culture is helping Groww win with millennials across India. Ashish, Lalit, thank you both so much for joining us today. So Lalit, let's start from the beginning. You know, you've once been quoted as saying that people in India need financial services. It is a basic need like food, clothing, shelter. Where does that belief come from?
So see, if you look, Devi, see in India, there was a movie, very old movie, many years back. It was called Roti Kapda Makan. It's a very popular movie. I don't know, I think Manoj Kumar starred in that. So which is basically your food, your clothes, and then your housing, right? And if you look today, and then beyond that also entertainment, education, and everything, right? And if you look at all these services, which are the basic fundamental needs of people, they are all financial services, right? By definition, we are aspirational, right? We want for future, and financial services provide you with that future. Be it like investing, you invest for future. You're buying insurance for protecting your future. You're taking credit to invest for future, basically to grow for future, right? So I think, and then the penetration in India is just so low, right? I come from a very small city, and people don't even know what is mutual fund there, right? And so on. So I think that was the primary kind of motivation that financial services is like core need for fundamental need of people, and that's the belief.
You were saying that in that small village where you're from, people don't even know what mutual funds are, but you do. How did you branch out? From that small village, you went on. Tell us the story, the journey from when you got to from that small village where people don't even know what mutual funds are to now launching an investing app that helps people invest in mutual funds.
Yeah, so it's a long story. So, by the way, I my parents are in small village, but I was lucky to study in it's like a district level place. But then, so I went to IIT Bombay, and instead I did not know about mutual funds, but I came to know about stocks, which was like one of my wingmates got an internship in one of the companies, and I was just checking and told me that this company is listed. And I was, what does that mean? And he said, listed means that, it's trading somewhere and you can buy stocks. And I was like zapped, like, okay, you can buy companies like this. You can buy a stock like this. That company is still, is not listed anymore. But I think, so I got excited and I bought one share for 80 bucks, 80 rupees, which is like $1. And yeah, that's the journey started, and then kept on. Then once you start investing, you start reading a lot. So then there is this like a rabbit hole of all the books, investing books. There are so many. You keep reading them and so on. Then when I started working, got some money, and typically I'm very don't have very luxury needs. So a lot of cash comes in, and you keep kind of learning more and investing more and so on. So that's how I came to know mutual funds. Was I think much later, and that was I think for the tax season. There used to be a scheme called ELSS scheme, which is at that time you could invest like 10,000 bucks in mutual funds, and then that was like 4 years later I came to know about MF.
So you were at IIT Bombay doing engineering.
Yes.
And this a classmate of yours that told you about, investing in stocks and he was an engineer too, that had a good understanding of finance. So did your 80 rupees grow? Like, how did you?
Of course. So Indian markets have done phenomenally well over the last 20 years, and a lot of companies are good. And if you're lucky, money will grow.
So when was that, like, how did engineering, because you were an engineer by training and also practice, right? You were doing that at Flipkart.
Yeah.
Tell us about that. How did engineering and finance come together?
See, I feel engineering is kind of just a way of doing things, right? So my first job in engineering was about building video algorithms, and that's also application, right? Entertainment. And then there was education. So education is the domain. And then there is Flipkart, which is e-commerce is the domain. Groww, financial services domain. But what is common across all these four is engineering, right? Tech. So that's like, Groww is not a financial services company, it's a tech company. So we were working Flipkart, and we were kind of very lucky, grateful, we're lucky to see that big growth. We started at like a very good times, and then I was exploring about my next business idea, and of course looking for partners also, and was lucky. Again, Harsh and I know each other since our first job, and he came into Flipkart. That's also kind of an interesting story. There was an interview scheduled with me for a product manager, and the name was Harsh, and I thought it's kind of a very common name, and then when we started the interview, I realized it's the same Harsh that I know for long. Of course, I did not take the interview because it was conflict. So he came in, and then we started discussing. His idea was to stay longer longer in Flipkart, but then I managed to convince him to kind of quit faster. And then Neeraj was working with me as an engineering manager, and I really kind of admired his grasp on people. Right, and tech. He has built a lot of scalable systems at Flipkart. So then three of us kind of started discussing. Financial services was kind of narrowed down idea. See, we are consumer folks, and they are like something we wanted to build that has very, very high impact. So education and financial services were two kind of things. Both Harsh and I had kind of burnt our fingers with education, so we thought, okay, we'll do financial services this time. And then we also went to Bombay and figured out, that they're far away from customer. People, you're sitting in Bombay building products, and your customers are like very, very far away from you. And then market size and so on. So and one day I was having lunch with Ishan, and I told him, I'm quitting and so, and he was like, oh, I also want to join, because I'm very, very passionate about financial services, and I've been thinking about this. So we're like all smarter. So my way of choosing people to work with me is he smarter than me? So Harsh was smarter than me, Neeraj was smarter than both of us, and Ishan is smarter than all three of us. So four of us started, and then it was about, okay, what to do exactly in financial services. So all four of us are passionate about this. Let's figure out the right approach, and no matter how much time it takes, let's kind of spend some time there. And that's when like experiments started and so on, and then kind of mutual funds struck there, because number one, it was a very simple product for retail investors. You can start with very small amounts, and then very diversified, very well protected by the regulators and so on. So it was almost like book for Amazon or Flipkart, right? So you buy a book from Amazon or Flipkart, it's the same, so for $500 you can buy a book. For $500 you can buy a mutual fund, right? So that's how we started. Yeah, and idea was like we'll keep kind of launching more products one by one.
So back to the fact that you left a job that you were doing, I assume, well at, and you had this comfortable job. Like, that's something that a lot of startup founders grapple with, right? You're working the stable job and you want to take a chance and test your idea. Where did that conviction come from?
So when I was in college, I had decided that I did a student startup also at that time. So and then over time, kind of you build that conviction. So this was not the first time I was quitting. I quit once in 2010 as well, right? For my first startup. So second time quitting was not that kind of tough. And then when you have co-founders who are equally who have kind of conviction like you and who are smarter than you. So then it becomes easy.
Ashish, let's bring you in on the conversation here. What was it like meeting Lalit and the team at Groww the first time?
So maybe back in 2018, we were actually looking for a way to play the investing world in India. It came from a personal need in that I couldn't get around to use all the existing investing platforms. They were not good enough for my personal use case of investing the little savings that I had. And so we were searching hard, and we must have scanned 20, 25 companies, maybe more. Many of the companies we met came from a very traditional financial services background. And as Lalit was describing, we were looking for a team which could disrupt the space with a technology-first, design-first, product-first approach. And that is what we found with Lalit and the team at Groww. The conversation grew over several interactions. I'd say the Groww team is one which is very product-centric, has a very strong focus on the customer, and that was very clear from the very early days. Their understanding, they were squarely focused on solving for the needs of the 27-year-old millennial in India, which I don't think any other company had that level of clarity. And their entire strategy around acquisition to product to service was all centered around just squarely solving for the need of that customer. That customer obsession really got to us, and we felt that maybe they'll be able to crack other segments of the market, but certainly they will do a very good job of cracking the segment of the market for the investing use case. But Lalit, if I may turn it on to you, what drove that customer obsession in the team from the beginning?
We work with Flipkart. Flipkart was known for customer obsession because of the founders, both Sachin and Benny. And then they came from Amazon and read a lot of Amazon. And from one point, if you see, you are building business because of your customers, and they are paying you in one way, right? And if you continue serving them really well, and if you really understand them, business will continue growing, right? And I think that's one of the basic principle. And secondly, from selfish perspective, it is actually good for business, right? If your customers are happy, they can pay you. I can't imagine a very large, very successful company where customers are not happy, right? So, and primarily, I think it's because of reading a lot of letter to shareholders by Bezos, and then of course Sachin and Benny has they have a big role to play.
How do you ensure that that flows through the rest of the organization?
Culture starts from the founders, right? And so when a person joins us, the interview process itself has few few rounds where we kind of assess, okay, how customer obsessed this person is, and depending on the seniority level, it can go very deep. When they join, the first session, the intro session that they have is with me, and in that 45 minutes, I just talk about just one thing, which is this is non-negotiable value at Groww. And in financial services, it's very easy to kind of get swayed, because there's money. When you see money, you can kind of. So that's thing. And then in meetings and in kind of all hands, they just keep watching us. Okay, how are we making decisions, right? When 10 people are in the room, what is all 10 are on the same page, at least on the one same page, okay, let's start from this, we cannot compromise on this specific thing, and so on. And then there are other things, we have Operation Bizarre, which is if you are working with Groww, you spend time with, doing support calls for the customers for a week. So those are the kind of things.
Maybe one other aspect which has been striking for me about Groww is how decentralized your decision making is. Many companies have all decisions kind of roll up to the founder and so on. Yeah. You guys have a 1,000 member team which is very decentralized in its decision making. Talk a little bit about how you have accomplished that and what are the benefits of that.
Personally, I love speed, velocity, right? Speed is bad, but velocity is basically in the right direction as well. And then when we think about it, how can you move fast? And the biggest hindrance for us, or probably for any other company, is decision making, right? If you are deciding everything, then you are limited by your own speed, and you can't be taking decisions, right? And in our organization, to move fast, you are taking hundreds of thousands of decisions, and the only way to do it is like if you can decentralize, of course by proper. So it needs a lot of work though, because everybody needs to align on the company strategy. So what we have done is the strategy is top level, like because strategy you don't need to decide every day or every month, right? Strategy is probably decided like once in a while, and if it changes and so on. But then day-to-day decisions are like happening in every pod or like every function, right? So that's the kind of primary motivation for decentralization.
Is there an example that you can give us where the team moves extremely quickly and you don't need to get involved in those micro decisions?
Yeah, so almost everywhere. So what we have done is, so there are functions, what I mean by functions, like engineering function, product function, design function, operations, business, and so on, right? So they are led by very, very solid leaders. They are people, they are exceptional at those functions, like, and they have kind of lot of maturity and experience. And then the people from these functions step out and create kind of pods, like Star Wars pods. So basically, there would be one engineer, there would be one product designer, and so on. So there's a very small pod, and these can be like from 5 people to 20 people, and so on. And they have a specific kind of goal, some specific purpose, and then related. So I'll give you an example. Let's say a mutual fund, right, is a pod, and then they become like a startup within themselves, and they decide everything and so on, and of course aligned with the company strategy, and kind of we discuss them with once a month or so on. Rest of the decisions are being taken by them. What is the product roadmap? What should we do in this kind of escalations and so on?
That's amazing. So they kind of act autonomously, but in line with the company broader strategy. Exactly. How do you deal with that? Like, as a founder, you seem very calm with letting go of that decision making almost. How do you deal with that on a personal level and also as a founder?
I don't like to get into too many things, and also calm, I appear calm, but I'm very, very hyper inside. So some people who work very closely with me would know that. But the thing is that, one thing is that there is a decision, right? And if you realize that you are not the best person to take that decision, because the person who is on the ground and who has a lot more context than you, and who is probably smarter than you, right? Mostly he or she is smarter than you, is more capable. So it's very important to just trust their guts and just trust their decision making, right? So I think eventually, again, from selfish perspective, it makes a lot of business sense also to kind of decentralize and empower people. And there is also like sense of purpose for them. So happiness is also very important, right?
So, you spoke about how you have a very strong focus on your customer. You guys are customer obsessed. And Ashish, you also mentioned, what would be, like, Groww is building for a 27-year-old millennial, right? But there are already several investment platforms available in India. How is Groww differentiating itself?
When we were starting, I was doing research I went to Google Play Store and searched mutual fund app, and there was like list of 40 apps, and I downloaded all of them, checked it out, and then there was no app which I felt that would meet customers' need. And we had done that, by that time we had done a lot of research on what customers need and so on. So sometimes people attempt to solve in a multiple ways, but there is just one variable that is missing somewhere, and you change that, and then and we found that or those variables, basically there were multiple of those. And also then when we look back, like if you look at Indian financial services specifically, I think competition has never hurts anybody, right? Every financial services is very, very competitive in the country.
I'll maybe chime in here. Lalit is making it sound easy, but it's very unique for a company to enter what is typically thought of as a crowded market with several players, as perhaps amongst the last entrants in the market, and then through very product centric and customer centric approach be able to become the market leader in that market. And Groww now has done it twice over, first in mutual funds and now very close to that in brokerage. So it's a very unique capability I think the Groww team possesses to be able to go attack a market which is several very well-run incumbents.
Can you give our listeners an example of what you've done to differentiate yourself from the competitors? I mean, you yourself said, Lalit, when you were building Groww, you downloaded these 40 different apps. Like, is it the user interface? Is it that customer support is quick to respond? Like, what is it about Groww that makes people want to stick with using the app?
So let's say you want to build something, and if you're building from the perspective of giving offering something, right? So that's how financial services works actually. Like, I build a product and then there is a distributor who will kind of, okay, I built this ABC, go and sell to like 5 folks and 7 folks and 10 folks. Or let's say I build this robo-advisor and offer it to customer, try this, enter this. And so that's one approach. The second approach is customer has a job to be done and just kind of be invisible and solve that problem, right? So that's the consumer thinking. So one is like push driven, another is pull driven. The only difference our approach has that it is more pull driven. It is more from customer's job to be done. Rest everything like flows through that. And now if you start from that, then everything, like if you backward thinking, right? You start from that and then all your decisions basically are derived from that process. And then it goes till, okay, how are your APIs connecting to how your product, how your UX should look, or how should customer reach out to you, and all these kind of flows from that. So that's the difference, I guess.
I think there are many factors which the Groww team has done right, and it starts from small nuances of the product to customer experience and service. Like Groww has amongst the best customer reviews on social media platforms. There are several small decisions that Groww must have done right, but I think it flows from the big decision of this customer centricity.
See, customers start loving, right? So by the way, when we launched, as I said, there were so many apps, and within like 3 months, we had more customers than most of them. And by the way, at that time we were not even zero commission. So when they used our product, they just loved it so much that it was specifically built for them, right? And then they would talk about it to their friends and their families and so on. And so for first few years, we didn't even do any marketing. Even now, most of our customers are organic customers, right? Why? Because they just love talking about Groww.
Just an example of this customer centricity, in the early days, there were lots of mutual fund distribution companies, and they would all offer what are called regular plans, where users have to pay a 1% commission. And Groww made the choice of going after what are called direct plans, where the users pay effectively 0% commission, and that is cheaper for users. And that is, we were seeing the trend, this change happening in the industry where users were migrating. Users were taking cognizance of the fact that there are some products which are cheaper than others and migrating towards the direct plans. And Groww leveraged that trend and made the right call of focusing on customers versus going after their own profits in the early days. So that's one example of customer centricity and a decision that resulted in us being able to acquire users at a rapid. So even today, new user acquisition is organic, which is phenomenal. Like you don't see that in consumer internet products or in fintech products. That level of organic adoption.
The other thing that I also noticed about Groww is I went on your YouTube channel and I saw a ton of educational content.
Yeah.
Is that part of that strategy as well? I mean, you want to educate your users so that they can make wiser financial decisions. Can you tell us a bit about that?
So when we came up with this insight about the product that it has to be DIY, basically no advice, customer should come on the platform and choose what they want. Now, if you're doing DIY and not providing education along with it, that strategy would fail, because then customers would make wrong decisions, and then, it can be good in short term, but in long term it would hurt, right? So we invested heavily on education, and that included, there are like lots of programs that we run. The YouTube is the Academy, which is Groww Academy, which is one of them. There's Ab India Karega Invest, which is where we go to physically to tier 2 towns and meet customers and educate them. We have Groww Thrive, which is where we build the best minds and conduct events twice in a year, which is like very, very popular. We have Groww Digest, which is the highest read newsletter in the country, which is just about financial education. So in all our, one common thing across all our educational initiatives is that we don't sell anything. We don't give a CTA, call to action to kind of buy something and so on. So that also kind of generates a lot of trust. And it's, by the way, it's very logical. If I'm a business guy and if I'm looking at my investments I'm doing in this, and you will see, oh, there is no return on this. Why are you investing millions of dollars in this thing? It will look very, very irrational. But I think that was fundamental conviction that we had, that it would work out. So that's how the strategy evolved.
I'll probably tie in with their focus on a specific customer segment as well. If you think of the 27-year-old millennial in India, he or she doesn't want to be spoken to by a wealth manager coming in and approaching him and trying to sell him products. They go research about products on online platforms, in particular, YouTube and so on. So Groww's acquisition strategy was, to a large degree, centered around a content strategy, solving for the needs of that 27-year-old millennial.
Awesome. So Ashish, you've spent a ton of time working with the team at Groww. What are some things that they've done incredibly well, that you would advise other founders to do or to implement in their startups?
I'd say the two other things which pop out for me are, one, a very long-term orientation. I think the Groww founders are here to build a large business over the next few decades. There are very few founders who are looking to transform their industries over multiple decades and almost make it their life's mission to do that. And the Groww founders have that. They are patient. They are not looking to chase short-term goals and targets, and are willing to make lots of short-term compromises, be it in terms of monetization or revenues or profitability and many other aspects of the business, in the pursuit of long-term success. And that, I think, is a very hard orientation to have for many founders, but it's a very, very admirable trait to have a long-term orientation. The second aspect which pops out for me is what I would call a certain degree of frugality in the way the company is built. We had many investors visit Groww's offices, and they came back surprised saying, "Hey, how many people are there at Groww?" I'm like, "There are 1,000 people now." And they're like, "Where do all of them sit?" Because the Groww's offices are so frugal and so small. People are often surprised that this is that large a company, working out of such a small and frugal office. And that has again been the case for them throughout their lifetime. They have managed to attract people and retain them without fancy offices and many of the excesses that we see in the startup world. And that frugality, I think, they've probably invested that money in the service of customers, but they've managed to build an organization very frugally and a culture which is rested on frugality. Those are the two things which pop out for me, in addition to customer centricity and engineering DNA.
That's amazing. How do you think you've managed to attract all this talent while maintaining this frugality?
So, see, there are two things when you think about working somewhere, right? So, actually three things. One is sense of purpose, and then there is autonomy, basically, right? How much independence that you get, and of course, the growth, the personal growth. We take care of all three. So, because of this decentralized, there is a lot of independence. There is a purpose because the kind of thing that we are doing, you feel proud about it at the end of the day, right? That like whenever somebody sees somebody walking with Groww t-shirt, they definitely ping on Slack, "Oh, I saw this, he was talking about Groww," and all those kind of things, right? That's the kind of good feeling that you have. But our productivity is very high, so we can, and then we have very, 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 very good ESOP policy, probably the best in the Indian startup scene. Although we don't talk about it too much, but people who work with us, they know about it, and we don't advertise it because that ends up hiring the wrong kind of people. So we tell everybody that if you're looking for money, don't come to Groww. If you're negotiating, starting with that's. But once they come inside, they see the the growth, and so we end up attracting the right kind of folks, and then they see also growth. So our retention is also very, very high. Our undesired attrition is probably the lowest.
Groww has a far widely distributed stock compensation scheme than many startups do. All secondaries, in every round that has happened since the Series A, there have been secondaries offered to employees. And those secondaries have been at par with primary, as in if the investor is investing at X share price, the employees have gotten secondaries or shares sold at the same share price, which is again very rare. So I think these are very unique aspects of Groww. I think they have done a very good job of taking care of their employees, and the retention numbers kind of show for it, and employee ENPS numbers as well.
Our ENPS is 93 percentile. Like.
So Lalit, what if you had to give one piece of advice to an aspiring founder, what would it be?
So there are a lot of advice everywhere on internet. There are a lot of gurus that are speaking about how to do a startup and what to do a startup. And one thing that I've learned is that there's no playbook for a startup, right? And there is nobody in this world who has the context that you have about your startup. And my advice is to not listen to any advice and just do what kind of you have really, really high conviction on. Everybody. So even if the smartest of the folks, the world that I am seeing is very different from, let's say, you are seeing, right? And then you have to believe your world and just go for it. So don't listen to any advice.
Lalit, thank you so much for taking the time to share your story with us today, and Ashish for sharing your insights with us.
Thank you.
I've been speaking to Lalit Keshre, co-founder and CEO of Groww, and Ashish Agrawal, managing director here at Sequoia India. For more interesting startup stories, visit our website, sequoiacap.com, or follow us on your favorite podcast platform. I'm Dewi Fabry, and you've been listening to Moonshot.